If there was one principle that you could continue to teach, what would be that principle and why?
That how you do anything is how you do everything. And so people don't realize that everything's connected. If I had gone into the pandemic unprepared, I would have had no choice but to sell off equity and fire a whole bunch of employees.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that you don't go over paranoid? You go into battle prepared. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
That's right.
I might make a bad decision or two, Albert, where I can go broke again, but I'll never be poor. As men, it is our job as fathers to teach our boys these four things: strength, courage, honor, and mastery.
What is one thing that your parents did that was right?
My dad chose to be an entrepreneur. And that gave me so much courage and confidence to become the man that I am, an entrepreneur, instead of going and working for somebody else. Like Ed Milet always says, some things are taught, some things are caught. My sister, she was crying and she was upset. And I told her, I said, one day I'm going to be so rich, you'll never have to work again. I realized I'm going to have to be my own boss, and it's going to have to be me leading myself and others. Comfort and convenience, Albert, are the death of people's dreams. Too much comfort and convenience makes us so weak.
Yes.
And we begin to think that, well, the American dream is dead, and it used to be good, and now it's not. Shut the fuck up.
Today I'm sitting down with a man who escaped communism from Armenia and built an empire in America. Someone who turned his pain into power, someone who has changed many people's lives, someone that I personally look up to. Please help me welcome to the show, Bedros Keuilian. Bedros,
Albert, thank you so much.
for
Well, I
being
appreciate
here.
it, man. Thank you, and it's really awesome that you took the time to come all the way out from the East Coast to come out to our studio.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bedros, first thing first, I always want to say thank you. I want to show my gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Not only you allowed us to interview you on such a short notice, but also allowing us to use your studio.
Of course.
You know, not a lot of people would do that, but you know, you and I both understand that your story, your wisdom can change many people's lives like it changed mine.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Well, it's a pleasure, first off, and secondly, as we were talking before the cameras
Yeah.
rolled, you know, the fact that you and I experienced so much of the same things, escaping Russia, Soviet Union,
Yeah.
and just in 2 different decades, we have a lot of similarities, and so it'll
Absolutely.
be a fun conversation to have. That's for sure.
And that's the first question I want to, start this whole conversation with.
Yeah.
Let's just say we had a time machine,
Mm-hmm.
and we put you today in that time machine,
Yep.
and we take you back to the 4, 5, 6-year-old Bedros, right? Today you have tattoos, you're masculine, you're successful, you build an empire in America, global brand. What do you think that boy, Bedros at 6 years old, would ask you if he met you?
That 6-year-old version of me was very scared. I'm not sure. I think if he was going to ask anything, he would ask, is it going to be possible? I didn't think a lot of things were possible. Remember, when I escaped the Soviet Union, it was still communism, right? There was still communism there. Even though my dad was a member of the Communist Party, it's not like our life was extravagant there. And so when we came here, it got even worse because we're living in Section 8 housing. We're having, welfare, food stamps. I don't speak English. And it's not like we lived in a time like now where if you come from another country, you can take out Google Translate
Yeah.
and translate the language,
Yeah.
right? I think people are more accepting today than they were in 1980 when I came out to the United States. And so I was a scared little boy. And as a scared little boy, when I would hear my dad say, hey, I brought you to this country so that you have opportunity, that you can become something bigger and better than I ever could, I would always ask myself, how's that possible? I don't speak the language. I get picked on. We have no money. They keep telling us to go back to your own country.
Yeah.
So that little boy was scared. He was naive. But I also believed my dad. I think just naturally, instinctively, when we're younger, we don't necessarily question our parents. If my dad says that we're in a better place, I just made the assumption that we're in a better place.
Wow.
And so because of that, I believed him. And I think that's why, because my next closest sibling is 14 years older than me. So my brother was 19 when we came here. I was 6. My sister was 22.
Wow.
because they were 19 and 22, I think they had some skepticism. They had doubts. They missed friends in Armenia,
Right.
Because
Right.
they had a life.
Of course.
My brother had a girlfriend. My sister was going to college, university to become a nurse. I was 6 years old. I didn't have anything, and so I'm naive. And my dad said, "You can do it." I believed him, but I just didn't know how. But I think because of that, I had the advantage over my brother and sister, and I wanted to do something to show them that I'm grateful for this risk that they took for bringing us here. And I think things panned out okay.
I want to share something. It's a fun fact.
Yeah.
You know, I came out of the plane. I'm like, oh my God, look at my hair. My hair's all messed up. So I put it on Google. I'm like, find the closest salon next to the studio.
Yeah.
And it brings me to the Frame Salon. That's probably 7 minutes away from here. So I go in. I'm like, hey, I need, fix me up.
Yeah.
The guy's like, oh, what brings you here? I'm like, I'm going to be interviewing Bedros Keuilian. I'm not sure if you're... So the whole shop stopped. They said, wait, well, hold on. You're interviewing Bedros? We follow him on YouTube. We follow him on Instagram.
That's
we watch
funny.
his stuff.
Yeah.
We see him at Starbucks sometimes. We say
Yeah,
hello.
yeah.
So I'm like, wow. Like, do you realize how big you are in this community?
It's always a welcome thing. Like it hasn't gone to my head. I'm very humble about it. Because inside I'm still an immigrant. Inside you're still an immigrant,
Yes.
right? Because you remember how life was over
Yes.
there. I remember how life was over there. I remember how life was over here when I came here. And so because we can hold on to that, I realize how big I am, but I don't let that get to my head. And I think people that do let it get to their head, that's when their greed glands begin to secrete. That's when we begin to lose our humility.
Right.
And we become just assholes to humanity.
Right.
And the other thing is, you've got kids. Your kids are smaller.
Yes.
You're 32. I'm 50. My son is 19 now. My daughter's 17. Their friends, families, my kids are listening to every podcast that I'm on in my show.
Yeah.
And they see how I carry myself. So when we're at the gas station, at a event together, anywhere, stopped under a red light, if I roll my window down, people go, oh my God, I'm listening to your show right now. They take out their phone, right? And if I acted in any other way other than with gratitude, compassion, and humility, I wouldn't be raising my kids right. And so because of that, I feel very grounded, but I'm very grateful.
Most people, they make a little bit of money, they get a little bit of spotlight, and they forget where they come from.
Yeah.
And I teach my guys to never do that. I said, you can't forget where you come from. The best part is Rocky 3.
Yeah.
Right? When Rocky goes and makes it big, he beats Apollo. He gets all comfortable. Now the spotlight's on him, and he forgets where he comes from. So he loses the hunger.
Yeah.
What would you say is a number one way to continue to keep that hunger, to keep reminding yourself where you come from?
That's a great question, and I think this is going to be a controversial answer for some people.
Okay.
People like you will get it. Work paranoid. I work as though I can be broke again tomorrow. I work as though I can get deported back to Armenia. Even though I'm legal, I'm a citizen, obviously.
Yeah.
But I work as though someone's trying to take it away from me.
I love it.
I just imagine in the back of my head, I play this stupid little game with myself, but I think it's the best game we can play. There's somebody somewhere in a basement, in a cave, in an office somewhere, on a marker board it says how to put Bedros Keuilian out of business, right? And because I operate out of a place of paranoia,
Yes.
but I work passionately.
I love it.
Right? So that doesn't mean I'm paranoid. I'm walking around because people, every time I say this, people go, man, I really feel bad for you. You're walking around paranoid. You're not living a quality. No, I'm living a very good life. But I live within my means and I make a lot of money. So I own a ranch. I own properties. I own this building. I own many buildings. I own many businesses. But I also work like it could all be taken away from me.
Right.
And I think that's an important way to live and operate. And if you do, you're probably not going to lose it. You're going to have a lot of gratitude towards it. And you're going to be an example of what hard work is. It's not going to get to my head. Again, I have the biggest thing that keeps me on my path is Andrew and Chloe, my two kids. And then the hundreds of kids, the Squire program. That's one of the things that I run, the father and son program. I always say, like, I'm the big brother or the father or the uncle of all those hundreds of kids that have come to the Squire program. They follow me on social media. They're probably going to be watching this interview. And if for a moment I let something go to my head, I get cocky, I get arrogant, that gives them permission to become assholes. And that means I'm influencing the next generation to become dicks instead of duty-driven men. And I'll never allow that.
Wow. Just to piggyback of that, I'll never forget what Mark Cuban told me. You have to work like someone's working 24 hours taking away from you.
Yeah.
Because he said that's what makes the best entrepreneurs best, because they don't stop when they actually have their first win, second win. They win and they continue to do so because they are in the back paranoid because they want to protect what they have built.
And it's like a healthy paranoia, right? Like, for example, if you go somewhere, this weekend with your wife, and you guys leave a nice restaurant, but it's a dark parking lot. You guys are in the restaurant. You're the last ones out. It's a dark parking lot. It's empty. You're not just going to keep your head down. You're going to keep your head on a swivel, look around, because it's your responsibility to protect yourself and your wife. It's that level of paranoia where I'm very aware that I could lose it all.
Yeah.
And because of that, I hopefully never will.
Yeah. And my dad, who's also Armenian, always said, hope for the best, but be prepared for the worst.
Yes.
And that's the healthy paranoia.
Yes.
That you know that if something were to go down, you're ready to take on.
Yeah.
Right? But you don't want to be the guy that's not prepared for worse things.
Well, and a great example of that, up until, it's funny, because I've been saying the same thing for the last 15 years, because it's been about 15 years that I've really hit it big. In the last 5 years, I think it's been monumentally big.
Wow.
But think about this. In 2020, someone did try and take it all away. The pandemic.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know who was orchestrating that. Is it Bill Gates? Is it Dr. Fauci? Is it the federal government? I don't know.
Yeah.
What I do know is that I own one of my biggest businesses, a 9-figure business, is a gym franchise, Fit Body Boot Camp.
Yep.
Dude, we lost 218 locations. If I wasn't prepared for battle every single day, when March 16th, 2020 came, and I announced to all of our franchise owners, hey, we're going to shut down for 2 weeks to flatten the curve. You remember that, right?
Sure.
But in the back of my mind, the paranoid former communist said, never trust the government and always over-prepare.
Wow.
After I turned off the video to our franchisees, because, private Facebook group, I said, 2 weeks, we're going to shut it down, and then I'm sure we'll reopen and everything will be fine. I turned to the CEO of my company, Bryce. He's upstairs. I said, Bryce, prepare 30 days of workout content that we can drop in a Facebook group for all the locations and their clients if this goes on beyond 2 weeks. Sure enough, 2 weeks became 3 weeks, 3 weeks became 4, and this thing went on 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months.
Sure.
And so had I not been paranoid, I would have had to sell a large portion of my company
Right.
to the vultures, private equity, that was, F45 sold a big portion of their company. Orange Theory sold a big portion of their company. 24 Hour Fitness sold a big portion of their company. I sold exactly 0% equity during that time because I operated from day one of the pandemic, paranoid, and I worked as though they were trying to take it away from me.
How do you control that paranoia not to overpower you to go into, panic mode, and you start to sell out and you start to make decisions that where you're going on defense rather than offense?
Good question. If I had gone into the pandemic unprepared, I would have had no choice but to sell off equity and fire a whole bunch of employees.
Yeah.
All in all, we only fired one person, and we only fired that one person because she went batshit crazy. I told everybody, hey, you can work from home, and so we're doing the Zoom thing.
Yeah.
Myself and the leadership team were here every day, but the rest of the 30, 40 franchise team members were working from home. But the 6 of us on the leadership team were every day we were here in our war room, in our conference room upstairs, and she's talking to her girlfriend, not realizing that she's not muted. And she's freaking out to her girlfriend on the phone, on the Zoom.
Yeah.
And I said her name out loud, and she looked at the camera. I go, hey, you're going to be fired. That's the only person I fired during the pandemic.
Wow.
Every other team member I kept. We cut everyone's pay by 20% for a period of time, but we kept. So how do you make sure that you don't go over paranoid? You go into battle prepared, right? There's a term, I think I heard it on like gangster rap music that said, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
I've stayed ready my entire entrepreneurial career. And because of that, the pandemic came and I was ready. If I wasn't ready, I wasn't battle hardened, I wasn't paranoid, I would have had to sell off a good amount of equity.
Do you remember when your rich dad, and call him rich dad because he
Jim
was your
Franco,
mentor, Jim Franco, subconsciously you bought the same car as he did? I'm sitting down right now here.
I just got goosebumps when you said that.
Yeah. Subconsciously,
Yeah.
I had the same conversation with my leadership team. We're going to stay ready so we don't have to get ready. Whatever happens, we're going through the battle.
Yeah.
Like what you're saying, it's like flowing through me because that's exactly how I approached that situation.
Yeah.
Everybody was firing everybody. Everybody was letting everybody go. We promoted the most. We kept our doors open. We kept working. I said, government is giving you a stimulus check. I'm going to give you my own stimulus check, Axe Elite stimulus check.
Yep.
You're not going anywhere. We're going to continue to fight.
That's beautiful.
And it was because of that mental paranoia that kept me saying, one day something's going to happen. You got to be prepared.
Exactly right.
And again, most entrepreneurs, Bedros, and correct me if I'm wrong, they go in and they splurge on Rolls Royces, on Lamborghinis, Ferraris. I, as a young entrepreneur that was building this for the last 15 years, came in with an idea of one day something's going to happen. I need to have a cushion. I need to have a safety net. Yeah. So if something like this happens, I'm not out there showing off my Rolls Royce and Lamborghinis, but I have a secret fund where I can go in and save my business.
Right. That's exactly it. And that's a war chest. And you need that war chest. You don't know when you need it, but you're going to need it at some point. And in the absence of having that war chest, because, listen, on one side of the ledger, I'm paranoid. On the other side of the ledger, I'm a very optimistic guy.
Sure.
Like, I believe tomorrow's going to be a better day than today. I believe the next day is going to be even better than tomorrow. Whether Kamala won or Trump wins, I believe that, we're going to thrive. We're going to do well. Me as an individual, yes. Me as a company, and me as and us as a country. However, it's important to have that war chest, because now if you have to go to battle, money, and also experience,
yes,
and then connections. We were talking about Pat Bet-David earlier before the cameras rolled. To be able to get a call from Pat Bet-David during the pandemic. Hey, brother, how's it going? Is everything okay? You doing all right? Yes, I'm doing fine, yes. Pat. Thanks for checking on me. Tim Grover, another guy you talked about, yeah. Right? Hey, how you doing, B? You doing good? Because Tim Grover spoke at 2 of my events, and then we ended up becoming friends. He's an immigrant like
yes.
you and me.
Yeah.
Checking in on you, Bedros. When you have those connections, when you have the money, the war chest, and you didn't blow it on Lamborghinis and Rolls Royces and bullshit mansions, and don't get me wrong, man, I've got a giant property and a huge 26-acre ranch, but when you compare that to my income, it's very small. It's the equivalent of a Toyota Tercel.
That's right.
You know what
I
mean?
Yeah. A lot of people, they feel like, oh, it's not gonna happen to me.
Right.
I'm gonna be able to pass this. And yes, maybe you will be, but what if you're not?
Right.
And to me, it's better to be prepared than to be sorry.
Yeah.
Bedros, I want to take you back to your childhood, because I think it's so important that we discuss, people's mental health, emotional resilience, and all those things, because I work with a lot of young people. Yeah. The age group is between 18 to 32, and a lot of people, they are programmed to think a certain way. They think like a poor person. Right? So I wanted you to kind of touch base on the difference of being poor versus being broke.
Yeah, good question. So I'll use me as an example. When we came to the United States, my family and I, we were poor. Mm-hmm. We had no money. And quite honestly, we were broke. So I believe poor, like think poverty, right? Sure. The word poor comes from poverty. Yep. Poverty. When people live in poverty, they're ill-educated. They don't have money intelligence. Yep. They don't have the understanding of how money flows, interest rates, compound interest, assets versus liabilities. Yep. They don't understand that. That's a poor mentality, poverty mentality. They're drinking high sugar sodas and eating crappy foods, and that's poverty mindset. We were poor. We didn't understand money. We didn't understand real estate. We didn't understand, leveraging employees and stuff to be able to get work done for you. Any of that stuff. But we're also broke. Financially, we were broke. I always say, now that I'm a multimillionaire and my net worth is over $200 million, I might make a bad decision or two, Albert, where I can go broke again.
Sure.
But I'll never be poor. I will never have a poverty mindset. I will never not know how money works. I know how money works. I know how to exchange money for value. I know how to leverage myself. I know how to scale myself through people, processes, and systems and technology. And so I might make a really bad real estate deal or some kind of bad decision on business. I jokingly always say this about Dana White. He crushed it with UFC. Now, there's that other thing that he started that he's betting on.
The power slap. Yes.
Power slap.
Yeah.
Listen, I love Dana White. I hope it's successful.
Yeah.
Just from what I know, and what the fuck do I know about anything? I'm a gym franchisor, supplement company, apparel company. I don't know anything about putting on big, giant fighting events. Doesn't seem like Power Slap is going to work. Now, he, I'm sure, is not betting the whole farm on Power Slap. But if he was, he might go broke. if it doesn't work out, but he'll never be poor. So broke is not having money for a period of time. Poor is a state of mind, is a poverty state of mind, that I'm blue collar, I'm not meant for success, that I'm where you have limiting beliefs about money and your capabilities of creating abundance. I'll never be poor again. I might be broke, but I'll never be poor.
One of the things that I learned through my 15-year entrepreneurship journey is the poor people, they pass over opportunities repeatedly.
Yes.
And when you give them a chance to break through, give them a chance to take on a opportunity that can change their life, they say, no, that's not for me.
Yeah.
You see, we're Armenians, we're not like that. It's not for us.
Right. Right.
And they always give the opportunity, but opportunity doesn't get lost. It gets passed on to someone else.
That's right.
Who does not have a poor mindset and takes it and says, you know what, I'd rather fail, I'd rather get back up and try again than not try at all.
That's exactly it. That's a beautiful way to look at it. Opportunity can be presented to two different people. One person can walk through the door.
Yeah.
The other person could say, that's scary. What if things don't work out? What if we don't do this in my culture? What if people laugh at me? What if there's 10 different ways that I could fail? Well, in the meantime, you took advantage of it, and I bypassed that opportunity. Someone else will take it.
I want to share something with you. I'm working with somebody who was going to be basically let go from our company. And this person, asked me, I really want to change. I really want to be able to make six figures, be the person that has a good example. So the management that she's working with, they're like, no, we're going to let her go. There's no way this person is going to change. So I said, give me 3 months for her. I took her under my wing. First month, she became a top cold caller. Second month, she was one of the first people to qualify for special leads. Third month, we're going for top 3 of the company. Like, you're going to go and you're going to surprise everybody. First day, she's getting cold feet. Do you think we're doing this too fast? Do you think, I don't think I should do it. I don't think I'm prepared. I don't think I can do it. And she started to doubt herself. So I said, listen, you made $66 1 month, where last month you made over $8,000. What the hell do you have to lose?
Right.
You better put your running shoes, you better pick up that phone, and you better give yourself a chance. That's all you need to do. Give yourself a chance. And she's like, okay, I'll give myself a chance. Today, she makes $500.
That's beautiful.
It's just because somebody has to believe in them.
Yeah.
To change our mindset.
Yeah.
So how important is it to work on the self-conception?
Here's how important that is. I remember when Jim Franco, going back to my first mentor, my rich dad, Jim Franco, by the way, he just turned 82 2 days ago.
God bless him.
Yeah, God bless him. He's a character, man. He's still funny, high energy, loves the ladies. He called me about, I'm going off a tangent real quick. He called me about 3 months ago, just to catch up. We still talk and catch up after 20 some odd years. And he said, did you hear I'm going through a divorce? I said, how are you going through a divorce? You're 81 years old, right? Yeah. He goes, you know how it is, big boy. He always called me, he goes, you know how it is, big boy. Girls can't keep up with me.
Oh my
and now
God.
he's 82 and still just excited about life and chasing life. But anyways, what Jim Franco showed me one time was when I was his personal trainer, he said, when are you going to open up your own personal training studio? I said, Jim, I don't know anything about business. He goes, I can teach you, I said, but I don't know anything about leadership. He goes, I can teach you. And I noticed over months, every time he'd give me a nugget, a morsel of hope, like you can be your own boss, you can open up a location, you can scale it to multiple locations, have employees, time freedom, I would always come up with an excuse. He had more belief in me than I did, right? And it wasn't until I began to ask myself, why does this multimillionaire believe in me more than I do? I've never maybe had the greatest belief system in myself in the past. Now I have tremendous, limitless beliefs about myself. But in the past, I always had limiting beliefs and negative beliefs that rich people, got there by stealing and doing corrupt things. That and that I'm a foreigner to this country. I'll never figure out the secret to wealth, right? So that's a limiting belief. A negative belief is rich people and people who drive expensive cars got there through corruption. Not true. There are some people like that, but not everybody. So now I have limitless beliefs. But when I ask myself, why does he believe in me? And I don't, I realize he might see something in me that I don't because he's wiser, he's got more life experience, he's older. And so when I started to adopt the things that he said through faith, right? Faith. I didn't believe those things yet, but I said, if he believes in me and he's 62 and I'm 25, I'm going to have faith that he's right. And so this is what that young lady did with you. You said, hey, give me 90 days, I can turn her around. She probably didn't believe in herself, but she probably also wondered, why does the owner of the company believe in me?
Right.
Why is he coaching me? Why is he motivating me? Why is he spending and investing his time with me? And at some point, something flipped in her where now she began to see what you see in her.
Right.
Now, that also came about because she had undeniable amount of evidence through the work she did by the coaching that you gave her.
Yes.
And so as I opened up my first personal training studio, hey, Jim, what do I do next? Now do this. Now hey, Jim, I'm ready to open up my second studio, third studio, fourth studio, fifth studio. Jim, I got an offer to sell these locations. Great, I'm going to help you negotiate the sale. I had my first sale before I was 30 years old, man. Sold my company, right? And so I share that with you because sometimes there's someone wiser, more educated, maybe has better life experience that sees something in us.
Sure.
That believes in us in ways that we don't. In those times, we need to just have faith.
Yes.
That if someone else can believe in me, I'm going to have faith that there is that thing in me, and I'm going to take action, and over time, I will develop the belief as well.
I have my own definition of hope. Many people think hope is a poor man's language. But for me, being somebody who was born on a refugee camp floor, came to this country with absolutely nothing, I wanted somebody to give me hope, and no one was giving me that.
Yeah.
So I had to find hope within myself. So hope for me is helping other people evolve.
Yes.
And if I have hope that you can evolve, right, and I can see you become a better version of yourself, and I can instill that in you, you're going to become, and you're going to say, well, if someone else believes in me, why shouldn't I believe in myself?
Right. That's a beautiful definition.
Thank
Helping
you.
other people evolve. I love that.
Thank you. Bedros, you grew up during the hard times of Soviet Union kind of falling apart, or becoming this Russia country that was called Russia. But you also escaped Armenia. You lived 10 days in Italy, then you came to the United States of America. What is that one nostalgic moment that can always bring you back to the moment where you are with your parents in Armenia?
This is a funny story. You'll understand it being born over there.
Yep.
The main capital of Armenia is Yerevan,
Yep.
right? The main city. That's where my dad went, and that's where I was born. However, my grandma lived in Kirovakan, a little village.
Okay.
At the time, dirt roads and everything. And she had goats and sheep and chickens, and it's a village, and she had a little farm. Well, one of these goats became my pet. And so, you would never think, like people here have pet goats, but I'm talking about like this goat followed me around like I was a kid. And I remember the baby goat following me around, and I would pet it and I would hand feed it. And so till this day, I could think about that pet goat that I had, and it'll take me to this most beautiful, comfortable place that I remember my grandma, my grandpa, this is funny, but my grandpa back then, the style was he had a Hitler type mustache, the square mustaches. That's just what the style was back then.
Yeah.
And so he had that, and he had a little cap, and he would always whittle wood with his knife. And I would run around their backyard with this baby goat who was my pet. And I think about that fondly, and it takes me to nice, like it's almost like an anchor that like, man, you come from there. It's like dirt roads, outhouse. I was so small. I was 4 years old. My grandma's house did not have a toilet. It was an outhouse, a hole in the ground, with a wooden outhouse on it. You go inside, you squat on the ground, and you go poop. And I was so small, I couldn't get my legs wide enough, and I actually fell in. Thankfully, one of my legs got stuck, and my older cousin heard me screaming and pulled me out of there. So it's fond little memories like that of my childhood that remind me that, hey, you're the guy that came from a little farm on your grandma's lot, fell in an outhouse, had a pet goat, and today you're recognized everywhere. Today you run an international franchise. Today people pay you $50,000 to do a keynote presentation, and it's such a blessing, and it's such a stark reminder that truly America is the place that dreams come true. You have the dream, you have to put the work.
Yes.
The dues must be paid. But man, even today, if I went back to Mars, like let's say I come from Mars, and I came to the United States, I could turn out to be who I am again in 10 years or less.
They say the dream is free, but the hustle sold separately.
Fucking A.
Right?
Yep.
And I love America because there's no other country, at least I know, that you can come in and be absolutely nobody.
Yeah.
Average Joe, and put your boots on and say, I'm going to go and make something happen. Despite my language, despite my culture, despite the differences, all I got to do is show up and put in the work. Most people today do not want to go to work.
Right.
They want to work from home. They want to stay and try to find the easiest way to make money. No, the way you go out there and make it happen by giving it your all.
Yeah. Comfort and convenience, Albert, are the death of people's dreams. Comfort and convenience, I'm telling you, the biggest mistake, well, it's not a mistake. Technology has to evolve. But I'm going to say the biggest thing that people rely on where, they can order their food on Grubhub or Postmate and have their food delivered, it's just too much convenience, too much comfort. And we instinctively want both of those things,
Yes.
right? Like, I can't imagine a caveman was like, fuck, someone's going to build a pipe from the river to my cave and I'm going to get water. I don't want that. I'd rather go fight the saber-toothed tiger and get water and spill all the water. And
Yep.
maybe a half a cup shows up to my cave. He didn't want that. But at some point, too much comfort and convenience makes us so weak
Yes.
that there's no more mental toughness, there's no more resiliency, and we begin to think that, well, the American dream is dead and it used to be good and now it's not. Shut the fuck up.
I agree.
I don't see any other country where people were pouring in through the borders.
Yeah.
Not 20 years ago, not even a year ago
I agree.
when Biden was in office. And that's
Yes.
because America is still a fucking great country. But the hustle must be done. It's not
That's right.
free.
That's right. Now, growing up, did you know you were poor, or coming to America kind of exposed that? And the reason why I'm asking that is because when I was born in a refugee camp, the first 6 years of my life, and the refugee camp was 350 square foot room, 2 twin beds, public bathrooms, public showers.
Yeah.
So we just had a small 2 twin beds cooked up, and that's it. To me, that was normal for the first 6 years of my
Right.
life. Once we got out of the refugee camp, and I'm like, wait, what? You have a kitchen? Wait, hold on. You have your own bathroom? That was a surprise to me. That's when I realized, shit, what we had, people don't have, and it's not in a good way. So for you, was it different?
It wasn't much different. When we came to the United States, the only reason I asked my dad many years ago, I said, why California? He said he had a friend of a friend who lived out here in California. That guy had a 2-bedroom apartment. It was just him and his wife. And he emptied one of the bedrooms for us. So family 5 living in 1-bedroom apartment for 30 days. We found a mattress top by the dumpsters. And my mom and dad slept on the mattress. Me, my brother, my sister slept on the floor around the mattress. And, we all shared one bathroom. So it was certainly not as bad as yours, where it's like a cooktop. And but at least we had an apartment to be in, but we had that one room of the apartment. But man, it's funny, you don't realize you're broke, you don't realize you're poor until your dad starts making a lot of money, not a lot of money, more money, and hey, we can get our own apartment.
Yep.
And soon it was just me and my brother in a room. It's like, wow, I get to have a little bit of space, And then, another 6 years go by and he bought a house.
Yeah.
Then I had my own room. Like, what the hell? Like, what am I going to do with all this space?
Yeah.
And then you start thinking back, you go, we were eating food out of a dumpster.
Yes.
We were literally like, I remember, then you start thinking like, oh, when the lady sent my mom back, because you couldn't buy that food with the food stamp, but you could buy the cheaper brand or the store brand.
Yeah.
That's what was happening. Now I could just buy whatever the fuck I want,
Right.
And so you only realize after the fact, which I think is a blessing, because in that moment, as a child, if I knew that we were poor, I probably wouldn't be able to process it. Obviously, my parents knew that we were poor, we were broke, they were trying to hustle, they're trying to make ends meet, but I didn't know. So I sometimes do wonder, what would it be like as an adult to know what being poor, being broke is like, not knowing whether you're going to be able to pay your water bill, gas bill. Even in Section 8 housing, you still have to pay rent. It's just
based on your income, there's certain percentage.
exactly right. And so there was times I would hear my mom and dad talking about, they have to, maybe we're not going to be able to pay rent this month, but I never had to feel the stress of that.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I was very blessed to be able to be spared that.
Talking about being subconsciously connected, I feel like, in a way, you're like the older version of me, right? That's, to me, is like, okay, I want to be that guy. When I was younger, if my dad brought Coca-Cola, you know, it would be everybody gets one glass because that's one bottle. Everybody gets to share one glass. And I would wait until I ate my food. If it was pasta or bread, whatever we could eat, we ate it. And I would be the last one to drink my cup of Coke. And today I still do that.
Yeah.
And my kids, my wife is like, why are you like not drinking it? Why are
Yeah.
you protecting one glass of whatever it is that you're drinking? And it's because that's the way I was programmed
Sure.
of scarcity. That's like, that's the only thing I have. I want to make sure I drink this last.
Yeah.
I know you shared that even now with how successful you are, with everything you have, you open your fridge and you'll see cheese with the mold. And you're like, oh, so what?
That's
you
it.
just eat it.
Yeah.
So how does someone get rid of that programming?
I don't know how you can get rid of that programming. And quite honestly, man, I think it's almost nostalgic.
Okay.
I really do. I feel it's almost nostalgic. Like I almost kind of wear it as a badge of honor. Like, you know what? I could eat something out of that fridge that's probably doesn't smell right, that has a little bit of mold on it, and I'll be fine.
Yes.
But if my kids ate that, they would throw up and have diarrhea
Yeah.
for days,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they've been accustomed to a different life. Now, if you carry that into your business life, that level of fear of loss, right? Like, I can't be this wasteful, because look, in business, we have to take risks.
Sure.
Right? And so if you want everything to be predictable, and I can't take a risk, it has to be predictable. If I spend this dollar, I have to know that I make $2 back. Hey, that's not how it works in business.
Right.
I spent $1 million and lost 100% of it. I spent $100 and I lost 100% of it. And so, but in life, I think those little things just kind of stick with us. Like till this day, I walk around turning off lights because my dad, I was a kid. Kids don't close the bathroom door. So
Yeah.
I'm in the bathroom taking a piss, and with the light on, and I just see an arm come in and turn off the light. It was my dad's arm,
Yeah,
and it's because he's paying the electric bill. I'm not. I'm a kid, and so to him, that's being wasteful.
Yeah.
And he programmed me so much about that today I'm a grown ass man, and I'll walk around everywhere turning off lights if no one's in the room. And I realize, like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And then I just giggle to myself and realize, it's just nostalgic. It's a great reminder of where I come from, and I move on.
Do you remember the time where you had two officers came into your house and they found out that your dad was selling suits on the black market?
Yeah.
And your dad was so resourceful that with his charisma, he kind of brought him to the house and said, I have a bottle of vodka. Let's sit down and let's kind of wash that up, right?
Yeah.
What's going through your mind at that moment? Are you afraid? Are you scared? Do you trust your dad can handle it? Do you know what's going on?
So in that moment, that was literally months before we left for
Yeah.
Italy.
Yeah.
And so word had gotten out. I think maybe my dad trusted somebody and
Yeah.
told him, like, hey, we're gonna escape to Italy, because the story was that my mom has a sister in Italy, which she didn't.
Right.
But the story was, because if you think about 1980, Italy and Soviet Union were friends.
Yes.
So if you say, hey, I'm going on vacation to Armenia, they're gonna go, no, or to America, they're gonna go, no, you're not.
Right.
But we're like, hey, we're going to go visit my wife's sister in Italy. And so they said, fine. So we had to make it look, that's why we couldn't take anything with us. We had to make it look like a family of 5, 2 suitcases. We're just going to Italy to visit. And of course, we went to the American consulate and said, hey, we're escaping communism and we want to go to the United States. But when the 2 KGB agents came into, and so somebody obviously got wind of it from my dad. I think my dad opened his big mouth by accident. And, the bucket of crabs story, right? Like if there's a bucket of crabs and one ambitious crab is trying to get out, all the other crabs are going to reach up and pull it back down. And I think maybe this person realized that my dad's going to go to a country that's free, that has opportunity, and he's not going to be able to do that.
Yes.
So he probably told the KGB. So late, and I remember it was dark outside, so after 8, 9 p.m., knock on the door, and it's not like America where there's like a search warrant. Like they knock on your door and you're letting
You
them
open
in.
it, yeah.
If you don't, you're going to have bigger problems, right? And so he starts speaking Russian to them and saying the word usta, right?
Yeah.
Usta. And so they come in. And I didn't know what was going on, but when I looked at my brother, sister, and my mom, I immediately felt the same fear they did. Like, as a child, you can sense fear.
Sure.
And I was like, they are not comfortable with this. They sense a problem. Now I have a problem.
Right.
My mom lined us up in the hallway, and we're just minding our own business. First, they inspect the whole house. and they found nothing. They were looking for chalk or any kind of sewing machines or yards or meter stick material, any kind of evidence that my dad's making suits on the black market.
Yeah.
And for your audience, like, why would my dad be making suits? One, he was a tailor, and he worked in a big tailor men's clothing manufacturing plant. But number two, by making suits on the black market, he was making extra money on the side, and that's how he was bribing the Soviet government to allow us to leave. Right? And so the KGB guys look and they find nothing. My dad has always had the gift of gab. In Armenian, he has a kaksir lezu, sweet tongue. And so he tells the guys in Russian, he says, look, you don't want to waste a trip coming all the way out here. I've got a bottle of vodka. Why don't we sit down and have some vodka and talk and catch up? Because they kind of knew each other, I think. I got the impression they kind of knew each other.
From what I heard from reading and doing my research, that your dad actually potentially sold the suit to the guy. Yeah.
So it's like, I think one of those guys kind of knew what was going on, but he was still doing his job, right?
Exactly.
Because he doesn't want to lose his job. And so anyway, they sat there for hours. And now at this point, we're no longer standing in the hallway. They let us be free in our apartment in Armenia. And my dad and these two guys sat at the kitchen table. They drank, they laughed, they told stories, and my dad sent them off drunk. I think within a couple months, we were on a plane off to Moscow and then to Italy from there, Rome. Yeah. You know what's crazy about that, by the way? A story I haven't told, because obviously you've done great research. You've read my book. You listened to my show. 3 months ago, dude, I was in Austin, Texas. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps again talking about it. This lady comes up to me with her. She's an American lady, blonde hair, blue eyes, and I'm sitting at I'm in Austin, Texas, at the Fairmont Hotel. I had just gotten done speaking at Dr. Gabrielle Lyon's event, and I'm an introvert. So after I speak and shake hands and whatever, I get overwhelmed. So I always come back to my hotel and I just hang out at the lobby and just chill out for a minute. So I'm sitting at the lobby restaurant, and this blonde hair, blue eyed American lady and her darker complexioned Italian husband come up to me. She goes, "You're Bedros Keuilian." I go, "I am." She goes, "Do you know who he is?" I go, "I have no idea." And she goes, "We think that this is my husband. He's Italian. His parents owned the hotel that you guys stayed in Rome, Italy."
Yeah.
And I went back and I asked my dad about this. And my dad says, yes, there was several boutique hotels owned by Italians, and they dedicated certain number of rooms, to people who were escaping communism. And this guy did his research, and he had maybe gone to his parents and asked his parents, and sure enough, Grigor Keuilian, Josephine Keuilian, my mom and dad stayed at that guy's parents' hotel, and we hugged it out, and I'm crying, and they're crying. Like, what a fucking thing, man.
That's
crazy. My parents didn't have money, so we stayed in Italy for 10 days, I think either for free or some maybe very super discounted fee because of the kindness of these people, right? And because they were anti-communists. And because of them, my dad probably had a little extra money left over, and he bought 5 bananas from a banana stand. I'd never eaten a banana. And now all of a sudden, at the age of 6, you're eating a banana, and you're like, oh my God, this is what America tastes like? I can't wait to go there, right? Because I was thinking I was already thinking we're in America. But it was just a crazy-ass story, man, to think about how, like, that's a story that's out of a movie, the KGB and my dad and the vodka, and my dad has a sweet tongue where he's like, don't just leave, like, let's just have some drinks. And then here we are, like 30, 40 some odd years later, I'm meeting a lady and her husband, and the husband's parents owned a hotel that we stayed in for 10 days.
It's incredible.
What the hell?
Yeah. This, looking at your story, like you say, it is a movie, and I have a great imagination. So when you're telling me this, I'm actually picturing things, and it's like, it just continuously wants to know more and more and more. But I think many viewers, the question they would want to ask you is that, looking at your parents, it's very chaotic. Right, there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of pressure. People don't know what pressure, stress is compared to what your parents went through, what you went through. What is one thing that your parents did that was right, that you feel like, wow, this whole thing that happened, one thing they did that I'm so proud of that they did that? What was that thing?
My dad chose to be an entrepreneur. Imagine you're 32.
Yeah.
My dad was 45 when we came to the United States, right? The equivalent of that would be, because if you take your family right now and you go to Japan,
Yeah.
look, because of the internet, because of Google Translate, you're going to be able to communicate just fine.
100 times easier.
So the only way this would make sense, if Albert and his kids and your wife get on a rocket ship and you go to Mars,
Yeah.
the only way so add another 10 years, 12, 13 years to your age, and then you and your family go to Mars, broke, and that's the only equivalent. And then they're in Mars. They're like, hey, we have all these jobs you can do. And you go, no, I'm going to do these jobs for as long as I need to open up a little tailor shop. He comes to a foreign country. He becomes an entrepreneur. People that are born here, American citizens that go and get degrees in bachelor's in business administration are afraid to go to infousa.com and get a tax ID number and start a corporation. This foreigner comes from a communist country, no Google, no internet, no nothing translate. Within 2 years, opens up a little tailor shop in Anaheim, California, and starts making his own money on his own terms. Yes, he traded time for dollars. He didn't leverage. But he was his own boss.
Yes.
And that gave me so much courage and confidence to become the man that I am, an entrepreneur, instead of going and working for somebody else. Like, that's a very right thing he did.
Most people that escape communism, refugee camps, they don't have the courage to go into a business for themselves.
Right.
Because they're so, traumatized with everything. So they're afraid to lose every dollar. They're constantly, saving money. They're afraid to invest money. What gave your dad the courage to do that?
I'm not sure if it was like...
Because he didn't have Jim Franco.
No. You know when there's that story where it's an old story of maybe the Spartans or something where they come to the shore of their enemies and there's like 100 of them and 1,000 of them.
Yep.
And they burn the boats.
Yeah, burn the ships.
Burn the ships.
Yeah.
We have to win this battle now.
Cortez.
Bingo.
Yeah.
We're not going back.
Yeah.
We have no ships. Well, that's my dad. When I think about it, he doesn't speak English. He's 45, comes to the United States, doesn't speak English. And so he knows that he's either going to get some minimum wage job somewhere. My mom is going to have to go work for someone else, right? Because, they did have some other jobs.
Yeah.
My sister worked at a pizzeria, which she had a horrible experience. My dad was pumping gas at an Arco gas station, delivering newspapers with some guy. But they knew that, like, if we're not going to make, like, good money. We're never going to become middle class if we work for someone else, because they didn't have the skills to make good money.
Yeah.
And so he probably felt like he had no other opportunity but to take that risk. The boats were burnt, the ships were burnt, and he knew that if me and my wife were going to work together and have a house in America, and then he ultimately also bought a second house, a rental property, right? It's because he had to create his own business where he couldn't be fired for his language, for his culture, for, no one's going to question his skills because it's his own little tailor shop.
And growing up in communism country, he finally had sense of power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Where he could be in control.
Yeah.
That is so freaking
huge.
powerful.
And my mom was, so his tiny little tailor shop was about the size of our studio here. And his machine is over there. And my mom was over his left shoulder. And she was a seamstress. Here's the crazy thing. In their older age, as they got older, my mom died 1.5 years ago from dementia. My dad is still alive. I'm looking at all these pictures over the last 20 years. In everywhere, because I took my family to different trips throughout the United States, lots of vacations that I wanted to pay for them. And my mom was always to my dad's left. And then I went to visit my dad this past Sunday in Anaheim at his house. He's got a caretaker that I pay for, an Armenian lady, sweet lady.
Wow.
And the chair next to my dad, where my mom used to sit, still there. And I realized it's to the left of my dad. Like, since the day that they came to the United States, my mom was always like to his left, and they always, I don't know if that was intentional or if it was just habitual.
Yeah.
But it's such a comfortable feeling. I see my dad sitting there, and I see my mom's empty chair, and then next to that is a picture of my mom. But I share this with you, man, because this man came to this country at 45 years old, family of 5, doesn't speak the language, doesn't understand the culture, knows that he's unemployable, and then within 2 years owns a little tailor shop where he can provide for his family, and he can provide a job for his wife. And one of his greatest joys, my dad's greatest joys, even though he would always fight with my mom about it, but today he talks about it nostalgically. I remember my mom would just get up, open the cash register, take like $10 or $20 out cash, and then she'd go to the grocery store and shop. And he would always say, like, don't go spending money because we don't have it, right? But I remember that, hearing the cash register open, my mom taking a couple of dollars in cash and then going shopping. And today my dad is so fond of that memory because he provided that for his wife, man.
Yeah.
You know, what a great feeling.
Fun fact, my dad came to the United States when he was 45.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, insane. And the same night that we came, we got to, on July 4th, we came in, it was Independence Day.
Yeah.
It was 2 a.m. Same morning, he walked the strip and knocked on every business asking for work because we were only sponsored for 1 month.
Wow.
After that, we were on
You're
our
on your own, yeah.
So I can, strongly relate to that because my dad, 3 heart attacks. I almost lost him on December 31st of this year.
Really?
We were in Jamaica. He has a heart attack.
Jeez, how's he doing now?
Recovering, therapy.
Okay.
But I played the moment of him dying so many times.
Yeah.
That he's one of the most important people in my life. That I knew that if he dies and I didn't prepare myself for him dying, then something might happen to me.
It would be catastrophic.
Emotionally, mentally.
Right.
That I will not be able to handle it.
Yeah.
So when that moment happened, it happened in a restaurant. So we're sitting, we're having dinner, we're doing surf and turf. He's ordering Tito's, excited, happy. All of a sudden he's like, hey, can you help me go to the bathroom? I'm just feeling not good a little bit. I said, sure. I get him up, falls, heart attack. In the middle of the restaurant in Jamaica, it's hot. People are running towards. I had to push everybody away. Had to, give him CPR, everything to bring him back. But the way I handled that is going back to what you said. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
Yeah.
I played that moment so many times, but I just have so much admiration for your father, for my dad, for any father who's left their life, culture, language, family to give their children a better future.
Dude, think about that for a minute, Albert. Think about that. We started this off by talking about staying a little paranoid.
Yeah.
Feeling like someone's going to take it away from you. And working like someone's going to take it away from you. And here you are telling me, like, you've got such love and admiration and respect for your dad. You had to play that out in your head well before he's ever going to, hopefully he has a long, fruitful life.
Thank you.
But you had to play that out in your head because he means something to you. And if you don't play it out and you do what most people do, which is just avoid it, ignore the idea of it, because we all know our parents are going to die.
Yeah.
We all know. But we never think about it. And then when they do, if we love them and we respect them, we admire them, we end up spiraling.
Yeah.
It's not a fun thing to play it out in your head. It's not. But to play it out and to ask yourself, what does it feel like? How am I going to act? What am I going to do? How am I going to accept this? How am I going to move on? How am I going to move forward with my responsibilities? I had to do the same thing with my mom. My companies can't stop running. I can't stop leading 7 different companies because, hey, everybody slow down. Mom stopped. I didn't miss a single episode. You could ask Ed right here. I didn't miss a single episode of the BK show. I'll admit some of my episodes weren't the best. I'll admit I was in the bathroom, like stressed out, crying, and then I'd wipe all the tears away and I'd come here and I'd shoot an episode, but I didn't miss a single episode because I had played it out. Wow. And these are the things that we have to do. You have to play things out and ask yourself, how will I react or respond? How will things unfold? Because if you don't, if you are caught by surprise because you didn't do that, that role playing in your head, you're going to be fucked.
I agree. I agree 1,000%. And I think no one taught me to do that, but discovering myself, having that one-on-one with me, and knowing my biggest fears, my biggest demons, I had to address them. I know you were, I believe, 38 when you addressed your biggest demon, and you just have no clue how much I admire you for doing that, because looking at you, tattoos, masculine, manly, alpha. You are such a great mentor and example for so many men out there, right? But you being able to address that fear and talk about you being, 4 years old and being molested, to me was like, there's nothing I can't face. There's nothing I can't fight. If this man at 38, with everything he has going on for him, being able to go and publicly talk about being molested and taking ownership of that, You gave me power. You gave me strength to address any demon that I had to fight.
I appreciate that, man. It was not an easy thing to do, but when I had that big anxiety attack at the age of 38, and I thought about it, and I wanted to do everything I could to not go to a therapist. My doctor gave me medication, the anti-anxiety stuff, Xanax, yeah.
Yep.
And of course that didn't help because it just made me numb and dumb. So, but going to a therapist, like what grown man at the age of 38 wants to talk about something that happened to them at 4 years old? And so, I danced around the conversation with my therapist for months, but I realized the greatest gift that I gave myself and the people that I serve is healing from what happened to me as a kid, being molested. And the reason for that is I got to now talk about it on stage. I talk about it on social media. I talk about it on my podcast. And police officers, firefighters, Navy SEALs, Green Berets, big-time entrepreneurs that you would recognize. One of them, he doesn't mind me sharing his name, Dean Graciosi.
Okay.
I spoke on stage, and he was in the green room. He was going to speak to people after me. And I speak on stage, and I talk about what happened to me. And I said, hey, the last thing I want to talk about here on stage is, because I always talk about leadership and making money and stuff. I said, but you've got to heal. If you've got trauma, physical, mental, emotional, sexual abuse like I had, you got to heal. And I kind of talked about that, and I told them what the process of healing looks like. And then I finished off my talk and went back in the green room, and I see Dean crying, and he stands up and he gives me a hug. I said, are you okay, man? He goes, dude, you just told my story. And I've never been able to talk about it, share about it. I'm going to go talk to a therapist. And some of the greatest gifts we can give to humanity are to heal ourselves and then have the courage to talk about it openly, because you don't know whose lives you're going to touch. And you think about Dean and Tony Robbins, they're business partners. They coach millions of people, right? I've had the opportunity to speak on their stages, etc. And now because of that conversation, Dean can go and impact more lives.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to do, is we need to heal. Making money is fantastic. Having financial freedom is fantastic. Being a thought leader and being recognized in places is fantastic. But being able to help people heal their demons, fuck, you're doing God's work, man. That's a gift from God. Yeah.
Absolutely. You at 38, you're having this anxiety attack, panic attack. You go see the therapist. Do you believe if you done it earlier, that would have helped you, or do you think that was the right moment, perfect timing?
Well, we always say it's the timing was what it was supposed to be. But I'm a very pragmatic person. I'm a strategic thinker, like most entrepreneurs are. Of course, had I done it at 28, a decade sooner, I would have removed more of the limiting beliefs I had, because I realized that experience, as I told Kevin, my therapist, created shame, confusion, rage. I had self-worth issues. So how can you build an empire, a business empire, if you have shame, confusion, rage, self-worth issues? And so I was always hitting a glass ceiling, right?
Yeah.
This glass ceiling.
Yeah.
And then I was limited, and then we always find a way to go back to our place of comfort. And so I feel like after that panic attack, and then going to the doctor, and then ultimately working with Kevin, my therapist, and then being able to heal from it, that glass ceiling was shattered. And so imagine had I had either a panic attack at 28 or had enough sense to go, okay, I think about this thing, I remember this thing every now and again that happened to me as a kid. I should probably go see someone about it. But I didn't have the balls to. And I thought, honestly, man, I even told Kevin, I said, I've dealt with that. I don't know why this is coming up. I don't even know why I'm crying right now, Kevin. And I'm snot's coming out and tears. And he goes, you haven't healed. He goes, you just disassociated. You separate that child from the man. You have an inner child. I don't want to get all psychological here, but we all have an inner child that we have to heal. That child doesn't go away. I look at my dad. He's 92 years old, and he sees my son and daughter. He just gets childlike with them. We all have that inner child still, and that child has had traumas, and that child's traumas need to heal.
Yeah.
And if that inner child's traumas heal, the man's traumas will begin to heal, and the glass ceiling will break, and opportunities will be abundant, and you won't do stupid things like men do, drink, cheat, pornography, any kind of avoidance or distractions through social media, whatever. And so, the plan, I guess God's plan was for that to happen to me at 38. But I wish I had enough sense for it to have happened a decade sooner because I would have had an even greater impact in my life.
At that point, only you know or someone knows?
No one knew.
No
No
one.
one knew, bro.
So you have a wife at that time, you have children at that time?
Yep, my wife, my kids, no one knew.
Wow.
Yeah. In fact, when I came home and told my wife, after working with Kevin for like 6-7 months, I was like, hey, I got to tell you something. She was like, oh, that explains a lot. I go, what do you mean? She goes, every time I come from behind you to hug you, you know, your wife wants to hug you from behind,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Sometimes. She goes, and I remember this. Like, I would pull her arms off and I'd turn around and I'd hug her this way.
Yeah.
And so I had a block against that. And so she took it as a rejection. Like, why are you rejecting me?
Sure.
Because I'm never going to tell her, hey,
Right.
this is because I've been molested and I'm being triggered. And I didn't even know that was happening.
Wow.
In my head, I said, we bury it away. As men, we bury things away and then we go, I fixed it. You didn't fix it. It's buried and it's playing in the background and it's going to fuck you up when you least expect it.
That was my next question. Does it buried but you don't pay attention to it? It doesn't come up? Or it does come up, it does trigger, and then you're like, bury it again. And then you have to bury it again.
It's that.
And every time you do it, you waste so much bandwidth, so much energy.
Yes.
Wow.
You nailed it. Every time, and by the way, sometimes it comes up unconsciously and subconsciously, meaning, obviously I tell the story, I was molested by 2 older boys. And so, if I have a male business partner and he starts being aggressive in wanting more equity or, maybe we're taking the company, he wants to take it one direction, I want to take it another direction, I'd start getting triggered. I would start arguing with him over something. But I realize now, looking back, it's always in hindsight, you realize I was trying to protect that little boy because every man felt like a threat to me.
Yeah.
Right. And so I bet, some of my male business partners in the past were probably like, why is he being so aggressive right now?
Yeah.
Why is he being so defensive? Why is he showing up as a 10, like being in the red when he should just be showing up as a 7 or an 8, on that thermostat of anger? And it's because that was subconsciously showing up. I felt threatened. Right. And so when you heal from it, you realize, no, you didn't do anything bad to me. He didn't do anything bad to me. We're business partners. We're like in a marriage together. You're like a brother to me.
Yeah.
Maybe we have a conflict. Let's resolve it.
Sure.
But I no longer see you as a threat. So the old version of me was a bad business partner as well.
To the fathers that are watching this, they have 4, 6, 8, 10, 12-year-old boys. What advice do you wish to give them so that way their boys or their children don't face what you faced?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the younger your child, the better the opportunity you have to educate them on your body is sacred. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. Run away. Come tell me. I'll handle it. I wish I would have heard that, right? Because when it was happening, we all know it doesn't feel right. It's not right. It's not right. But if someone had told me, your body is sacred, even though you're 3, 4, 5 years old, you have autonomy over your body. If something doesn't feel right, they're not allowed to do it. Run away, use your words, fight if you have to, come and tell me and I'll take care of it. I would have had the confidence to do that. Yeah. Instead, I kept my mouth shut, didn't say anything. So the younger your kids are, boys or girls, the more opportunity you have to educate them on standing up for themselves. Now, as the kids get older, right? Now they're 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 and beyond. Hopefully you've had that conversation. But beyond that, especially men that have boys, you've got to help them become prepared to become men. There is no magical thing that happens that a boy becomes a man overnight or on his 18th birthday or on his 21st birthday. As men, it is our job as fathers to teach our boys these 4 things: strength, physical, mental, and emotional strength, courage, honor, and mastery. The first three, everyone can understand that. Strength, physical, mental, and emotional. Courage, like you are the protector, the defender. You might have to take risks. Understand that. Honor, as in loyalty to, right? Loyalty, respect, character, protect your name. Mastery. Mastery is what? Be valuable to humanity.
Yes.
So many young men today have no skill, have no asset, have nothing they bring to the table. Mastery is, do you know how to change a tire? Do you know how to code a website? Do you know how to do a sales presentation? Do you know how to do something that can produce money? It is the modern version of hunting is working, adding value to humanity. And if a man can't teach his sons that, that son will become a lion in a world where he is declawed and defamed, and he will not survive.
Wow.
And if he does, he will have a bad reputation and he will always suffer.
In our dinner table in our house, my kids are homeschooled.
Beautiful.
They are very good at jiu-jitsu. They practice 5 days a week. This is something they want to continue to do. They want to pursue. And every day, even though they're homeschooled, my question to them, what value did you add? And who did you add it to?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just, hey, do your homework. No, that's what you're supposed to do. Oh, go to school. That's what you're supposed to do. Go to practice. That's what you're supposed to. But what value did you add, and who did you add it to?
Yeah.
And if they're thinking and they can't answer it, it's because they lack guidance.
Yeah.
It's not the kids are not gonna figure out to add value themselves. Somebody has to show them what adding value looks like.
Yep.
Making someone else's life better, being able to take control, take ownership of certain things. When mommy came from a grocery store, before you went and ran to the house, did you say, Mommy, can I please help you with the groceries? That's adding value because you're helping mommy. Stuff like this. Nowadays, parents spend less than 6 hours a week with their kids. 50% of divorces in America are happening in front of our eyes.
Yeah.
And families are being broken apart. Why? Because no one's talking about what makes a family family. Men are not playing a man role. Females are not playing a female role. We're not taking care of our children. It's all because we're focusing on the wrong things.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And look, big government, again, people might say that I'm a little too paranoid about government, but big government does not want you to have influence over your kids. They want to influence your kids.
Right.
And how are they going to do that? Through the school system, through television, cartoons, et cetera, that they control the media, right? Because they want to create future taxpayers. They want to create people who are dependent on the government, who are going to vote for higher taxes, who are always going to look to the government for help. And so why would they want your wife and you to be available, to teach value, to teach self-worth, any of that stuff? And so it is imperative that we as parents teach, or they will be taught a different ideology by the opposition.
Yeah, just to touch upon that. Today in the airport, 4 a.m, I'm in the airport getting ready, and a husband and wife, I would say probably 65, 70 years old, next to me there's a seat. The wife sits down, and I see the husband is standing. I get up. It's 4 a.m. It doesn't matter. I tell the husband, please sit down with your wife. I get up, take my backpack, and move away. He goes to his wife. He's like, can you believe this? I haven't seen this in years for someone to give up a seat so that way I could sit with my wife.
Yeah.
He goes, you have no idea, young man, that you just made my morning, that we still have morals.
Yeah. And that's so important, Albert, because there might have been others on that plane who saw you do that, and then you just coach someone without even having to physically coach it.
Yeah.
Ed Milet always says, some things are taught, some things are caught. Think about how many people could have caught that lesson because you chose to be what I call a modern day knight.
Yeah. I tell my guys in our leadership group, I said, you learn more by paying attention than talking. So if you just be quiet and you just pay attention, you observe, you can learn so much. But because you're thinking what to say, because you're thinking about what to do, you're missing all those beautiful lessons in front of you. Bedros, I want to be able to take you to now talking about who were you in high school? Because I want to know, did you discover you're going to be great at what age? Was it high school? Was it after high school? When did you discover that you have greatness in you and you just got to unleash it?
So I laugh because I discovered, I knew I was going to be great early on, meaning I didn't know how I was going to be it, but I knew I needed to make a lot of money early on because one of the experiences, and I touched on earlier, my sister had a job within the first 6 months of coming here. She was 22 years old. She had a job at a pizzeria. And the guy that owned the pizzeria, he was just a douchebag, and he was very suggestive. He was very handsy with her. And she would come home crying, wanting to quit her job. And my dad would say, just work there one more week, work there one more month. We need the money. And so, and again, if you look at the age difference, my sister's 16 years older than me.
Yeah.
So, as you can imagine, especially being Armenian, my sister is like my second mom. She
Yes.
raised me,
Yep,
right?
yep.
She raised me. When I was born, she was 16. And so I see her not only as my older sister, but also as a mom figure. And I remember one time going up to her when I was 6, 7 years old, within that first year of being here in the United States. And she was crying and she was upset. And I told her, I said, one day I'm going to be so rich, you'll never have to work again. And so that, because I knew that my dad was saying, stay there because we need the money. I'm sorry that's happening. I'll go talk to the guy. I'll make sure that doesn't happen, but we need the money.
How
Stay
old are
there.
you there?
Maybe 7. It was within our first year of being here, right? And so I knew it was a money reason that my sister couldn't quit. And I knew that if I could make money, I could solve her problem. Now, obviously, when I told her one day I'm going to be so rich, you never have to work again, that didn't solve her problem immediately.
Yeah.
But here we are now for the last almost 20 years. She works for me from home, does absolutely nothing, and gets a big check. And every year she gets a raise. And she always sends a lot of my June and all this great Armenian food, whenever I go visit her with me. And she goes, that's the most expensive Lama June, because I think I pay her like 70, 80,000 a year.
Yeah.
I go, sis, don't worry about it. I made a promise, and I'm following through with my promise, and it means everything to me. So I knew there was greatness in me, that I had to be great. I just didn't know the path.
Yeah.
Thank God I ran into Jim Franco. Now, when it started to set in was when I started getting jobs. I worked at a bagel shop when I was in my early teens, got fired. Disneyland, got fired. Most jobs that I had like 3 or 4 jobs, I got fired. And I realized I was unemployable. I didn't like having people over me who didn't lead by example. I can only think of one guy. His name is Doug. He was one of my managers at Disneyland. He came in to Disneyland in the kitchen and he worked with us. Outside of him, everyone else just looked down at us as busboys and fry cooks. And so I was pretty mouthy, and I would talk back to them, and I'd get fired. And so I realized I was unemployable. And I was like, if I become a boss, I'm going to be different. I'm going to be a ruthless leader, but I'm going to be in the trenches working with them.
Love that.
And so that's what I do today. If any one of my sales guys upstairs is like, man, it's hard to sell franchises, you know what? Hey, Joan, clear my schedule for a week. I'm going to sit in his cubicle and start closing franchises. He could watch.
I love that.
Right? He could watch. And then if I could prove it, then you got to do it, because there's nothing special about me. And so I knew there was greatness in me when I knew I was unemployable, so I had to figure out what my greatness was. So somewhere around maybe 17 to 20 years old, I realized I'm going to have to be my own boss, and it's going to have to be me leading myself and others.
Why do you think God chose you?
Man, I don't know if God chose me.
And the reason why I say that is because many viewers may not know the story of you breaking into someone's home, you being a getaway driver, and that day
The helicopter police chase.
Exactly. And that day, that lady said, "I didn't see him," and that was your almost second life beginning.
Yeah, that was a fork in the road. So it was myself and 3 other guys in my Toyota pickup. I was 18 years old. This one time, I was the getaway driver, which means I wait outside of the house while my friends go in the house. Normally, it takes 8 to 10 minutes for them to empty out the house of all the valuables. Within 30 seconds, they're running back and they're saying, drive, drive, drive. And I start driving. I go, what the fuck's going on? We thought the house was empty. There was an older lady who was in the house.
Yeah.
They, scared her. She scared them. They came running out. And of course, my Toyota pickup was a 1979 bright yellow Toyota pickup.
Oh
and so, I can
We're
imagine.
right here.
Yeah, right. I can imagine she looks through the window, sees this thing, and tells the police it's a yellow Toyota pickup. And so before I know it, there's a helicopter over us. There's unmarked police cars right behind me on either side. And I'm like, guys, this truck doesn't go any faster than this. This is it. So I'm going to have to pull over at a gas station. We're all going to run, and every man for themselves. I didn't realize that the cops had a plan, and they wedged my doors with their bumpers. They pulled us all out, and then they brought the lady. She was probably from like 20 yards away, and she's pointing to the first 3 guys sitting on the bumper of the cop car. And she goes, yeah, I recognize him. Like, he was in my house, he was in my house, he was in my house. She points to me, and she doesn't recognize me because I was in the car.
Sure.
And so because of that, I got my car impounded. Obviously, I was running away from the police.
Still got arrested.
Still got arrested. Yeah, went to jail for the night. And my thanks to my brother, he did, obviously spare my dad. My dad would have beat the shit out of me.
Yeah.
So I called my brother instead of my dad. That's the beautiful thing about being the youngest one in the family. You've got older brother you can talk to. But anyway, with that said, I think that was a fork in the road. I don't know if that was God choosing me. I do know that it was in that moment I realized every time I do something bad to make money, I lose 2 to 3 times the amount of that money within the next few months. So it's like if I make $100, I'm going to lose $200 or $300. I make $1,000, I lose $2,000 or $3,000. I never seem to get ahead doing criminal stuff.
The law of karma.
Yes. And so it hit me, and I was like, I think this is a fork in the road. I think this is where my path has to go another direction. But I don't know if that was God choosing me. I don't know if that was luck. I do know that I was grateful for that opportunity, and I wasn't going to squander it. And I just put my head down after that and worked and listened to my mentors. And then the rest of it was just compounded over time.
Yeah. So when that happens, right, you're afraid of, obviously, since a young age, you were afraid of your father.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was always afraid of my father.
Yeah.
And I can never understand that, so maybe you can help me. I was so fearful of my father, but yet I love my father so much. You know, and in Armenian culture, or maybe where I grew up in Russian, Armenian culture, you get hurt, you still get your ass kicked by your parents.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm hurt. Why are you whooping me? Like, you're supposed to hug me. You're supposed to make me feel better. Yeah. In our culture, it's almost like you got hurt. You weren't supposed to get hurt. Here you go. You get slapped again, right? So how did you learn to love your dad but forgive your dad?
I probably wasn't able to forgive him until my late 20s, even early 30s, truthfully. I respected my dad. And I think that's might be what you're mistaking. We respect our dads. As we get older, we realize what they went through. Yeah. We begin to love our dads in our culture and cultures like ours, where our dads were rough and tumble, maybe violent. Maybe they would drink and lose their shit. My sister still tells me stories of my dad. Because remember, she was the oldest.
Yeah.
She experienced a young, angry version of him. Yeah. You know what I mean? I experienced the angry, older version of him in the United States. 2 different stories. My brother tells me stories. But you look at my dad today, gentle as can be, but, you know, and he just cries. You can tell he feels bad. But I realized I respected my dad. I was aware how hard he was working. I was aware of the risk he took bringing us here, and I respected him for that. But I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you, if I loved him, because he was very hard with me. Like, my mom had to dive, literally throw her body between us several times. Yeah. And in that time, one of the times, I remember, like, clawing my way to the bathroom, slamming the door and locking it, and like holding the door closed, like, as though like the fucking predator was on the other side trying to get me. When my dad lost his shit, it was over. He didn't care. You know, you're in an apartment, so he knows if he punches a hole in the apartment, or one time he threw his keys at me and I ducked and he broke the glass behind me, he knows he has to pay for that. Yeah. But before he has to pay for that, I'm about to pay for it physically. Yeah. And I share that with you, man, because I had a lot of respect for my dad. I had a healthy fear of my dad. But I'm not quite sure if I loved him until in my late 20s, early 30s, when I started to understand what he really might have had to experience when I put myself in his shoes. Yep. When we're younger, we're selfish. So we go, man, you know, he hurt me. All my friends would be put on restriction. You know, hey, you can't have TV, you can't play with your G.I. Joes. My friends were never physically beaten, but I was. You were. And so as I understood the risks he took, the hardships that he had, and then as he got older and he opened up about what happened to him as a kid, he had he was an orphan, right? He was an orphan. His mom died when he was 2. His stepmom dressed him in a girl's dress and sent him to school because she had a daughter, and it's her stepson. She's not going to get new clothes for him. It was expensive. So imagine being kindergarten, first grade, going to school as a boy in a dress. How are you being picked on? Wow. Like, what is the trauma you're experiencing then? You know, in my head, I laugh about it by saying my dad was a cross-dresser before cross-dressing was a thing. Yeah. But in reality, like, could you imagine how fucking terrible that was for him? Yeah. There was no therapy. There was no, like, how do you process that? He's not going to come home and tell his dad. His dad's trying to run from the Turks who are trying to kill them. Right? And so all that to say, he did the best he could. And so once I started to put myself in his shoes and realize what he did and risked his life to get us here, I began to love him and respect him. At least that's how I feel. I don't know if you could resonate with that, but that's how it was for me.
You just shared something that my dad shared with me in terms of his trauma. You know, he was 8 years old. His father caught him smoking, and he literally made him shave his head, left the only ponytail, and make him go naked outside and close the door.
There you go.
and everybody was making fun of him. Then he saw his older brother when he got caught smoking. He bought him 20, the packs
Yeah.
of cigarettes and said, "You're not leaving until you smoke the whole thing."
Wow.
So talking about trauma,
Mm-hmm.
right? They didn't have internet. They didn't have Bedros Keuilian. They didn't have.
They didn't have child protective services.
They have
Because for
nothing.
all of those things,
Yeah.
they would have gone to jail for it.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. But most importantly, they didn't have self-development.
Right.
So therefore, you and I look for ways to heal. You and I look for ways to grow, to evolve, to be able to get better. Our parents, they had to shut their mouth, go back to work, and do nothing but provide and protect.
Yeah.
And there was no Xanax. There was maybe a bottle of vodka
Right.
to numb the pain for the next day
Yeah.
and then go back to
Or
work.
to make them more angry so they can give a bigger beating.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Patrick Bedavid, he shared this with me. He goes, when you're younger, you idolize your dad. He's your hero. He can do anything. He can run through any wall. Then when you get into your teens, you start to really hate your dad. You start to,
Like a resentment.
resentment
Yeah.
there, right? And then when you get older and you understand what they went through, you start to humanize them.
Yeah.
And that made sense to me. I was very angry at my dad for a very long time for not understanding me.
Yeah.
But the reality was I didn't understand him either.
That's exactly right.
So it was like two bowls just going
Yes.
at it at all times. But once I dropped my ego, dropped my pride, and tried to understand him, today he's my best friend.
Yeah.
I talk to my dad every single day. On the way to the airport, 4 a.m., I'm like, "Hey, I'm going to the airport. I'm going to be flying, blah, blah. Whatever you need, let me know." Answers at 4 a.m. Still does everything he can to be able to support love.
beautiful.
But it's amazing how most people that are born here, that live here, they don't realize how hard it is to be able to adapt to the specific culture. And your dad did that, my dad did that, and we were fortunate enough that we learned to forgive them.
Right. And that's
Because
what it
you
is.
say that, you have to come to a conclusion that your parents did the best they could.
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't. Most people play the victim. Most people want to be able to point the finger.
Yeah, because we want to blame someone. We always
Right.
it's easier to blame someone, right? Like I didn't break my leg, you broke my leg. I didn't want to be broke. You made a bad decision and you wasted our money. But at the end of the day, like if you realize that, listen, these people did the best they could
Yep.
with the circumstances that they had, the money they had, the understanding of the world they had, the traumas that were unhealed that they had, then we become more compassionate towards their pain. But again, it takes time and age and wisdom for us to develop that compassion and to put ourselves in their shoes.
Yeah, I agree. Now, let's talk about your rich dad.
Yep.
Right? The Jim Franco. Many people would be very grateful and blessed to find someone like that. Why do you think he invested in you? Why do you think he, being who he was, being so successful, why did he choose you?
I think he saw how curious I was about his life. I would, think of a big LA Fitness gym, giant doors and windows up front, and I would see I remember it was a champagne-colored Cadillac Escalade pulling up, and I was like, "Oh, that's Jim," and I'd wait for him. And then next time it's a Mercedes, the next time it's an old classic car, and I would ask him, like, I was always curious, why do you have multiple cars? How can you afford them? And then he invited me to lunch at his house, and I saw his house on top of a hill, and it's like, your shower, you have to go in and turn a corner for your shower. My fucking shower door has to open like it's a curtain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He didn't have a shower door or a curtain because you go into the glass, you turn, and there it is, man. Different spouts and everything. And so I think he saw my curiosity, and he saw something in me that he probably hadn't seen in other young men.
Yeah.
And there's something called, I forget what it's called, generativity. There's an age group when we get to about 50, 55 years old, we develop as men something called generativity, which is we want to be able to pass along wisdom and information and knowledge to the next generation.
Wow.
It's instilled within men. Like there's that conquer phase in your 20s to 40s where you just want to conquer the world. You're like, fuck everybody, I'm going to conquer the world.
Right.
And then when you conquer the world, you go, you know what? I'm going to help this next generation find their path. That's just in us.
It's your way of giving back.
Yeah, and I think that was his way. Like, I don't even know if he knew it, but that he saw something in me. I'm curious. I'm interested. And he saw that in me, and he probably had the need to pay it forward to someone, and I happened to be on the receiving end of that. But this is why I always keep his name on the forefront of my tongue. I still visit him like he's my rich dad, like he's my dad. He has 2 daughters who are savage women who run his company now. And I go, hey, if you ever need, and they have husbands and they're very capable. Donnie's a fucking awesome guy. The oldest wife's Jamie's husband. I said, but you ever need someone, a dude, to like show up for you, like I got you. And he knows that.
Wow.
And I think, and I appreciate him for the lessons, man. He didn't have to take his time and give me those lessons.
Right.
You know, like he's paying me to be a personal trainer.
So if someone's looking for a mentor and they got somebody's interest, what do they do as a mentee to keep winning that time, to keep showing the mentor that they're worthy?
A couple things. First of all, if that mentor has a business that you could work in and add value, ask him, hey man, do you have a job for me? Most companies have a sales position. So anyone can learn to sell. And then now you're getting paid to be mentored by the person that you look up to. In my case, Jim was working out 3 times a week with me. And I said, hey, Jim, if I give you a 4th time a week on me, can I then pick your brain more? And that's when he started to invite me to his house.
So you added value to him.
Yeah, I gave him 1 free session every week on me so he can work out 4 times a week. And then he goes, hey, why don't you come to my house? We'll have lunch or dinners together once a week. And he started to pour into me.
Love that.
And sometimes I would ask questions. Other times he would just talk the entire time, kind of like what you said. I would shut my mouth and I would listen.
Wow.
And I've learned so much. I've also learned, and I've talked about this openly, he's also been a cautionary tale. I would not advise anyone to take marriage or relationship advice from Jim Franco. And he and I laugh about that. We talk. That. I mean, I told you, he's 82. He's going through a divorce right now. This is his 3rd or 4th wife.
Wow.
You know? So sometimes the lessons also come in not just as examples, but also cautionary tales.
I love that.
Yeah.
Last question. I know you're busy, and I want to be respectful of your time. If there was one principle that you could continue to teach over and over again out of everything that you know today, what would be that principle and why?
That principle would be this, that how you do anything is how you do everything. And so people don't realize that everything's connected. How you present yourself, like your bank account is connected to your car in terms of how clean your car is, and how clean and chaotic your car is connected to your relationship, how organized your relationship is. That's connected to how you lead your business, your family. If you lead your family well, you're going to lead your business well. Wow. How you do anything is how you do everything. And people think, well, I could be a great leader here, but then be lazy there. I could be a great husband, but I'm not going to keep my car. You can't. We don't work in silos. Everything's connected. And the moment you realize that, you have to be a 10 out of 10 in all 4 categories: faith, family, fitness, and finances. And if you can be a 10 out of 10 in those 4 categories, you become a congruent man. And a man who is congruent is seen as a leader, and doors open up because God gives you the opportunities.
Here you have it, guys. Thank you so much, Bedros.
Thank you,
Appreciate you.